Welcome to the show that looks at truth, fiction, and reality with a smirk. I'm Aaron Peterson.
I'm Amanda Sink.
I'm Brian Williams.
And welcome back to Smirk. That's right, Brian Williams has returned to the show. Zach, unfortunately, we're having some scheduling conflicts, so he couldn't be there for the next two episodes, so Brian is going to fill in for him. And each week, one of our hosts introduces an original story, which we then use as a springboard for a spirited and lighthearted discussion on whatever the moral or theme is. Brian, you were on, for the dog and the urban legend episodes, right? A couple weeks
ago?
Yeah,
those are a lot of fun. So
the best ones, obviously, is what I heard of all time.
Absolutely. Number one on my list. Number one and 1A and 1B.
1A and 1B. Which are the ones you listen to?
Whew, man, the ones with me.
Those are the only ones I know about, so.
They were the catchy ones. Well, we're going to do another story this week, and actually, ironically, because Brian was coming back, I picked a topic that I knew was near and dear to his heart, but he doesn't know what it is yet, so, and neither does Amanda, so I'm hoping that it still is near and dear to your heart, and I haven't misjudged that.
Otherwise, it's going to be real awkward.
It's going to be real awkward. I feel like I got out of that years ago, Aaron, but thanks for paying attention.
Oh, man.
So if you've never listened to an episode of Smirk, Brian was a former host of the Hollywood Outsider, so that's where he comes from, and he also was on an episode of Smirk. He was on A Dog's Paw and the Charlie No Face episode. So go find those if you want to hear those. We're going to get into this. And if you like Smirk, every app has a share feature. So please do us a favor. Share this episode on your social media outlets. Please. It really does help the show. So thank you so much for that. You guys ready to hear a story?
Let's do it.
Jack was scared. It had been 30 minutes since Jack last saw his dad, and he was still nowhere to be found. The sun was going down, faster than he ever expected. When his dad walked off the green for a bathroom break, he figured maybe 5 to 10 minutes tops. Dad wasn't the quickest guy in the world, but surely it doesn't take him half an hour to handle his business. The golf course was seemingly deserted, except for them, as Jack had not seen another soul for at least an hour. For such an upscale place, you would think more would be out here hitting the links on such a pristine Father's Day weekend. The weather was stellar, the fairway was meticulously manicured, everything screamed perfect timing for a round of he and his dad's favorite pastime. Jack had looked everywhere, still no one to be found. His dad had wandered into the woods just to the east of the course, and it had been 45 minutes now with no sign of life. He picked up his cell to call the clubhouse, but there was no signal. Should he take off on the cart, he thought, or just walk through the woods himself? Before his debate could finish, he heard the growling. Perhaps it wasn't so much of a growl as it was a convoluted mumble, as if someone were trying to scream through a mouth sewn shut. The noise began to increase, not in terms of volume, but by the sheer amount of it, as if a pack of wolves were about to emerge from the woods just as dusk took control of the horizon. Suddenly a woman leapt out of the woods and rushed Jack. He fell back onto the ground as his eyes tried to adjust to what was in front of him. Blood was smeared all across her face. Her skin was wounded and falling off the bone, and her eyes were lifeless. The woman fell to the ground and quickly began crawling towards Jack, who remained on the ground as he attempted to snap himself out of shock. The woman's jaw began to pop. Her teeth began to chatter, and Jack finally woke out of his daze to understand what was happening. He was under attack. The woman lunged forward and attempted to take a bite out of Jack's exposed calf. Shorts were obviously a bad call. Jack caught her head with his foot, kicking ferociously as he reached behind him and grabbed the first club he could get his hands with. The woman's crazed, sadistic mouth made another attempt on Jack, this time going for the other calf. Just as she did, Jack swung his 3-iron straight into the woman's temple, knocking her off. The stunned woman was only fazed for a second, as her animalistic urges were leading the charge as she lunged forward once again. Once more, Jack swung the club, this time hearing a crack as he released his patented swing. This should have killed a normal person, but this woman was anything but normal. Jack regained his footing and stood over the woman just as she made yet another attempt, this time standing upright and going for his throat. Jack closed his eyes, asked for forgiveness, and swung away wildly, this time taking the woman's head clean off. Jack looked at her head and noticed something peculiar. The eyes, they were still blinking. Jesus, he thought. Could it be? Are these things real? Jack stood in stunned silence for what seemed like hours, staring at the woman's corpse and still animated head. Suddenly, a finger shockingly tapped his shoulder, and as he turned to see the familiar, jovial face of his father, his club was already half swung, and Jack was too late to stop it. Dun dun dun.
Dang.
Wow.
I know, right?
That was dark.
I was pretty proud of that. So what do you think the moral or theme of my story is, Brian Williams?
Don't do bath salts.
All right. I think that works. Done. Amanda, what about you? What do you think my moral or theme is?
Either to always look over your shoulder or always carry your golf bag with you.
Sure.
Always carry your favorite club.
Randomly, when you're hanging around Target, just pick up your club, walk around. Nobody's going to say anything. No, it's adrenaline. It's a hell of a drug.
Mm.
I got you.
Because if it wasn't for adrenaline, his dad's head might still be there.
That's true.
Just saying. But here's what I want to ask you guys. Okay, so obviously the topic is zombies. Zombies!
Arr.
How would you have ended that story when Dad shows up? How would you guys have ended it? That's my first question.
How about he's finally defeated the woman. He's standing there catching his breath, panting heavily, right? He's just swung, 3, 4 really hard swings at least. He's trying to sort out what the hell's going on. He's breathing really heavily, probably more aggressively than your average person is, normally breathing. All Dad sees is his son standing over this headless body, and doesn't know exactly what's going on. So he takes him out. Dad takes him out. He's thinking, I don't know what he's done, but I'll take him out and figure it out later. But right now, I've got to stop this guy.
Wow.
That's also very dark.
That's darker than I came up with. That's for sure.
I got issues. Daddy issues, apparently.
Happy Father's Day indeed.
I'll say that I kind of expected at some point, because the dad was like a little absent from the story for a few minutes while he was dealing with the woman, that the dad maybe turned into a zombie and was like going to be an actual zombie when he turned around, rather than just the same old dad. But I did like the way that you ended it, where because adrenaline can work that way, where you don't know what's going on, and you kind of are hazy and not fully
tunnel vision,
Yeah. So I could see that happening in like such a bizarre situation where you're like, what the heck am I fighting right now? And you turn around to think that someone else is going to attack you, and whack.
That actually was my first, when I first wrote it. It was that Dad was a zombie, but I just thought it would be more interesting because we're recording this on Father's Day. I just thought it would be more interesting if, no, he was all good and son was just a bastard. He was just riding adrenaline. He had no choice but to follow through with it. I mean, how do you drop? I've swung a baseball bat. I'm sure you guys have too. I mean, if you're in mid swing, it's hard to just drop it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, absolutely. But, they do call that a check swing, so it is possible.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I feel like you can't really test this theory unless you're being attacked by a zombie on a golf course.
Right. It is hard to recreate that circumstance, for sure.
All right, so let's talk about zombies. Why do you like them or don't like them? And I did mention that earlier because I know Brian is a big connoisseur of zombie culture. So why do you like this entire subject or topic or genre so much?
Well, I think there's a few reasons, but basically, number one, it's a villain, or basically a villain that everybody can hate. Everybody can gather to fight against, right? So, and it's usually that feeling of being overwhelmed, which is, it's not so much about the zombies individually. It's about usually them collectively. Like, you're held up in a small room and they're banging on the door. You see the hinges flexing. You know they're coming. And that's just it. They just always seem to keep coming. It's more of an overwhelming presence than maybe just the individual scary flesh-eating zombie that's walking down the book aisle or something.
The book, obviously looking for a dictionary.
Obviously.
Yeah, or a thesaurus of sorts.
Yeah, I think it's just that maybe the classics, small one or two people or a small band of people against, dozens, hundreds, thousands of fill in the blank, whatever it is. Whether it's an army, or whether it's a army of zombies. It's that Thermopylae story, basically.
I think I like zombies for the same reason that I like any other type of kind of horror villain, which is, like vampires and werewolves and all of that, just because they have such a unique way of defeating them that's different from, if you were being attacked by a person, realistically, anything you do could harm them and get them to back off or, hurt them in some way. When it comes to a zombie, they have no motive for what they're doing other than hunger, and that's unique to them. And they literally want to eat your flesh. Like, that's what they're after, and that's so creepy. And then to add on top of that, the limited capacity in which you're able to defeat them. Like, you have to get everything just right to be able to survive that. And so it creates a very unique situation for both the victim and the villain in this situation being the zombie.
I love the concepts that were, especially, I think Romero really did this well. The concepts of people and you care about can potentially be your foe within seconds, and you don't even realize it, or they don't even realize it. And I really, Walking Dead, expands on that quite a bit. Somebody gets bit, and then if they don't tell anyone, 2 days later, they could kill you. I love that angle because you're taking what's already terrifying. Like, the idea of somebody crawling out of a grave is pretty terrifying. The idea of, your grandmother got bit 3 days ago and she's going to turn around and come eat you in your sleep. That's way more horrifying to me. So it's almost like turning your own friends and family against you in a way. And it makes you very suspicious of everyone, which is kind of why I wrote the story the way I wrote it, is because I love that aspect of it. I love when you don't know who you can trust, and they could turn at any time and there's not much you can do to stop it. And when is the right time to take them out if they have turned? There's a moral dilemma there.
There is, because it's not like they're attacking you because they want to attack you. Like, it's not like grandma's, you shouldn't have eaten the last slice of cake and then she decides to come after you and kill you. There's no real reason behind it other than a zombie has now changed all of her drive and motivations.
Although, write that story, because that sounds fast.
Yeah, I'm making notes right now. Hang on. All of a sudden, I'm inspired.
But like, if you have to choose between your survival and killing your grandma, and in your mind you'd probably be like, but this isn't really grandma. Grandma wouldn't be like this. Grandma's not choosing to do this. You have to fight that decision of like killing your grandma to save yourself. And can you even do anything to save her?
Right, but you are trying to make that decision. You are trying to convince yourself in a matter of seconds or minutes.
Right.
At the most, 24 hours, 36 hours, right? You're trying to convince yourself of that. And that's going against however old you are, 20, 30, 40, 50, 50 years is probably pushing it. But anyway, a long history of life with this person. All those memories and stuff that you're having to fight against to say, this isn't who I think she is, but it's hard for me to pull the trigger or to swing the axe or whatever. Yeah, that's always one of the biggest emotional draws to that genre.
How do you guys feel about, Walking Dead does it, Romero does it, several other films have emulated this, but where they take zombie culture and they make it more about the people than the zombies. Now, are you fans of that kind of entertainment, or do you prefer when it's just the mindless undead coming after you and not so much the people going after themselves?
That's always an underlying factor. I think that that's kind of been one of my issues with The Walking Dead the last few seasons is that it is more about the drama between the people. Actually, this past season was actually pretty good, or technically still is, because the season finale hasn't aired yet.
Yeah. Because we're having our own Walking Dead moment right now.
Exactly. Yeah. So
that's probably not as funny as it was in my head.
But that's kind of been my issue. It's the people seem to be outnumbering the zombies at this point. So now it's just becoming basically a drama. You know, it's like everybody's they've been around the zombies, the walkers, for, I want to say in the timeline of the show, it's like 6 or 8 years, somewhere in that ballpark. There's been a couple of time jumps here and there. So it is about more of the interpersonal relationships and interacting with new people that you're coming across, which obviously you're going to have that in that type of scenario. You're going to have those situations where, all right, here's these other people. How much can I trust them? But I think they've go so far to where it's almost like, the zombies are they're props at this point.
It takes away the scare factor for sure.
Right.
I mean, we're no longer afraid of that horror where we're just, okay, so it's just the people. I mean, it's just like a CW show or a movie, you know, whenever you take the zombies that much out of it.
Right. And so so there was, and actually, and to that point is there are a couple of episodes this season here that do kind of hark back to that little bit of fear, that anxiety, that anticipation of, or that fear of what's coming through that fog, what's going to happen. And it's been a little bit better ride here lately.
Yeah, I think you have to find a really nice balance of keeping you if it's going to be a long-term story, then you're going to obviously have to put some connection in with the characters that are humans and alive, because then you can't just completely rely on the zombies to tell the story, and it would just be kind of this cat and mouse game.
Right.
But at the same time, you don't want it to be like you had mentioned, Brian, where the humans that are alive, the alive people are outnumbering the undead. The whole purpose is to feel afraid for all of the living.
Right. You have to be reminded of that threat that's out there. Why are all these people banded together? Why are they, having these issues with this other group of people? You still have to have that threat, and they have to feel like a threat. And that's where I think they've maybe lost a little bit. They got a little too, and they've got some great actors, and they've got some really unique storylines and stuff going on. And I don't want to discredit that, but it's almost so much of a focus on that to where, hey, we forget, there's actually this threat that's out there that could take out both of you in no time. If it had, if it could strategize.
Maybe stop focusing on Daryl looking longingly into the wind.
Right.
And, I got you. Show a few more hordes coming.
I feel like a good modern day example of being able to balance the two together is Zombieland, because you're getting really...
Are you scared in Zombieland though?
Well, I mean, there are moments where I'm like, are they going to get out of this? They're probably going to get out of this, but who knows? Like they inch
39 minutes into the movie, I'm sure they're getting out, but I'm not.
Yeah.
But I'm not 100% sure.
No, that's fair. But I feel like they make it about the zombies while also making it about the people and their survival with the zombie, in that experience. And so it's not all about their personal lives and their interactions with each other, especially in the first one. The first one was really just like, how are we going to get past this? What the hell is going on? And that felt like a good balance if you want to have a good balance of the two for a modern day example versus The Walking Dead, which has kind of gone in a couple different directions in terms of what the main focus is.
Yeah, and I did think Bill Murray was getting out of Zombieland. My bad. Called that one wrong. Do you? I don't know if Amanda, did you see any of the Romero ones? Well,
yeah.
Okay. What do you guys think about when he started the Night of the Living Dead? That was very much. I mean, he was speaking about humanity and civilization and almost like class warfare. Wouldn't you say, Brian? Or what do you think?
Yeah, there was definitely some society metaphor, allegory, whatever it is.
Societal metaphors or allegory?
Yeah, it was about, it definitely had some, it wasn't just to try to scare people. He was trying to relay a message as well. But yeah, there is some, definitely some deeper meanings than just the get away from the slow groaning, rotting corpses.
Well, and I always liked that a lot of his movies were, like you said, a small group of people trapped in some location and they couldn't move on. And so they had to deal with each other. And then the war came to be about the people inside, like how the different personalities or the different class types or race types, whatever they were, they had to get along to.
Yeah, right. They had to squash all that and for the better, for the better good. It was about survival. It wasn't about, hey, I'm a better person than you or you're better than me or anywhere, or we're all equal. It's just, look, we got to get through this.
Well, and a big difference between how Romero's, aspect of zombies versus our modern day look at zombies is that now it's all about hope. How are they going to get out of it? We believe they're going to get out of it, versus Romero's were much more like, we don't think they're going to get out of it. There's
much more dire.
It is. And there's not a lot of hope in it. You don't feel inspired that they're going to survive in, those types of the older ones that Romero had done. But like now it's all about you. It doesn't feel like you're in as much of a position of concern for those people.
And what I found interesting is if you go through it, the Romero films were very popular, but more culty. They were popular in that cult sense. Like they were never big box office behemoths or anything. They were just those movies that you and your friends watch. I mean, in the 80s when we were little kids, those are the movies you'd watch because, we can watch it and we can get it on VHS and our parents won't know and it's bloody and, it's so gross. But they never really became popular. But then all of a sudden, probably 10, 15 years ago, and it was before, maybe it was around the time of The Walking Dead. Maybe that's what really exploded the zombie.
Well, I think
psychus.
What was it? Dawn of the Dead?
Dawn of the Dead, the remake. Yeah, that did wonders.
That helped kind of jumpstart it anyway.
But isn't it crazy to you to think that the whole time, because Brian and I are a little bit older, so when we were growing up, it was never popular. It was always like that thing you and your friends that really liked movies kind of talked about, but most of your
like
mainstream
friends.
Yeah, it's just like comic books. Very, very true. Nerd. And then suddenly just blew up and exploded into this whole thing. And I just kind of, Amanda, was it like that for you? Were zombies always popular for you as far as you can remember?
No.
Because for us, it was really like halfway through our lives, that's when zombies started gaining.
Yeah, it wasn't. It definitely wasn't halfway through my life because I'm still just about to hit 30, so I'm basically at half of my life now. But I would say like when I was younger,
I hope not.
well, yeah. I mean, you want to be like a third through, right? I mean, that's
right. Third. Yeah.
I don't want to be too old and like surviving where I can't even walk. That just sounds like. Anyway, I'm going to get off of this.
Dick Van Dyke is like 93 years old. And he dances and he's married to a woman that's like 45 or 50 years old. So
is that the goal? Is that the end
yes,
goal?
For me, it is.
But I would say that no, it wasn't like that.
Got to push you around.
There was a surge of not only, when you have Dawn of the Dead that came out in the early 2000s, and that was popular, and it started to spark some popularity, and so did like Resident Evil. The early 2000s really started to make that happen, and then there was a surge
28 Days Later.
Yeah, and so there was a big surge of these. And so that became the popularity, where before that, it was kind of like you were weird if you liked stuff like this. Anything that was in the horror world, you were considered kind of like creepy or a goth or like, just different things like that. You had stereotyped labels placed on you and you weren't one of the cool kids. And it's like now in the year we're in right now, if you don't watch that stuff, you're seen as unusual. And it's like Brian said, it's just like how comics are. It was not the norm to be interested in dead people. Like that was not the thing that there was that common mindset where it's like, what's wrong with you if you can enjoy stuff like this, And then all of these films started to come out and people started to realize, I can enjoy them without being like, a psychopath and wanting to murder people myself, or whatever the misconception was. And then the B horror film thing started to surge too, where it was like, now that became a popular thing. And so all these kind of work together, I think, to make zombies a popular subgenre.
What I think is fascinating, especially now, is, you know, there's so much of a mob mentality, and there has been for several years. I mean, cancel culture and all that jive. But
it's like, yeah, everybody hates the cancer.
Hey, they have T-shirts that say "F you, cancer." We're against it.
Anyway, the whole mob mentality thing has been something that's just exhausted people. And part of me wonders if the explosion in popularity might subconsciously be part of that, because people they're just watching and going, fine, I'm glad that it's a mob of the undead, because then I can just kill them all. I'm tired. Then I can just erase them from.
People are so tired of society that they want to live through vicariously
through entertainment. Yeah, just take out these mobs. Just take them out. Just take them out. I'm tired of hearing about them. And this is a subconscious way to live that dream, I guess, that fantasy.
I may be guilty of that thought once or twice.
I wish you were all zombies.
Like, it would just be like one thing to focus on, survival. Fine, we don't have to deal with all this other stuff. It's just a matter of, okay, there's all these thousands or millions of undead walking around. It's just about avoiding those and trying to survive and stuff. So it lets you just like strip away all the day-to-day crap that we have to deal with and deal with now it's an entirely, more dire set of circumstances, but it's a shorter list.
I have been very impressed, especially the last few years, how creative some writers have gotten with this whole genre. I mean, Warm Bodies made a romantic comedy out of a dead dude.
And that was great.
Yeah. I mean, and it's very clever.
There's a musical? Wasn't there one?
The Apocalypse, Anna and the Apocalypse or something
I think so, yeah.
What was the Schwarzenegger one, which is he's really good in Maggie,
yep.
where his daughter gets bitten and he has to care for her. I mean, there's so many different ways they've taken it, and I'm just stunned every time I hear a new one, because I'm like, wow, I never thought of that. That's very clever. I mean, to have basically a family drama about your daughter dying and cloak it with zombies is fascinating to me. To make a romantic comedy where you fall in love with one, how's that going to work? And they found a way to make it work. It was blew my mind. I love that it's grown in that way. But it leads me to my next question. Do you think zombies have now officially been played out?
It is more tired than, say, 7 or 8 years ago. I mean, to your point, there have been some very interesting movies and shows and spins on the culture, but it's getting harder to create something new. And all these different little genres and subgenres, they come and they go. It's like the tides, I mean, Westerns are popular for so many years, and then they fade away, and the science fiction, spaceships and lasers and aliens and stuff come and go, and natural disaster movies are, same thing. There's very few genres of movies that are and shows that are constant. I would say it's definitely on the backside of the curve.
Well, and here's the other thing is you have to try to reinvent the wheel. I feel like they're trying to reinvent the wheel more so with the human characters rather than trying to reinvent the wheel for zombie characters. Like, there's nothing unique about the zombies. It's just a change to the human story element. And so what's making it feel fresh? What's making it feel new when you're just kind of reinventing the same thing that's already been done? And it happened so fast. It was like 2004, I feel like, was really like the year zombies became popular. I mean, even when you think of Shaun of the Dead and you start going forward, and it just became this huge surge. And then The Walking Dead kind of took over pop culture for a while and became the main talk of the town in a lot of conversations. And then when that started to take a different turn and people started to get turned off by that, which was like some people's first entrance into zombies.
True.
And then things started to dissipate there. And now it's like we're not really getting any fresh ideas around it. I don't think that they're played out to where we're never going to see it again or never going to be energized by it. But now we're just kind of discontent, where if we hear that there's a new zombie, whatever coming out, TV show, movie, book, we're just kind of like, been there, done that, seen it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to something new, even if it is really smart and inventive, we're already turned off by the idea of like, well, it's probably just going to end disappointing. And I think a lot of that comes from The Walking Dead, no offense, but people just really, that show did not maintain the way that it should have for a lot of people.
They probably should have wrapped it up, honestly. Yeah. I mean, it's like anything. You go on too long, except for Law and Order SVU. Everything else has gone on probably too long. You go over 10 years, that's pushing it. And that's a hard show to keep going.
Grey's Anatomy is another one that's run on forever. But at least with like Law and Order and Grey's, you have a kind of a set location and people transfer in, people transfer out. There's a reason there's understandable and reasonable causes to refresh the cast and to create new storylines, although they're always the same thing anyway. It's just different people involved in it, but that's what people like.
How are you going to save him? No, how are you going to save him?
Right. Oh, you mean Dr. So-and-so is hooking up with Nurse So-and-so?
Right.
They're so dreamy. McDreamy.
They're dreamy or they're steamy.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it's a little bit more difficult when you're talking dystopian or a post-apocalyptic setting.
Especially now they're still running into canned goods. And I'm like, I don't think canned goods can last that long. Like, I know.
I think even Twinkies are going bad at this point.
Yeah, right? Although it would be funny if they ran across one and then somebody just ate it and then died. And that's how they got the virus.
You shouldn't have ate those canned shrimp.
That was a bad call. All right, so final question, then we can head out of this one. When you think of zombies, there are now two, and thank you, Danny Boyle, for introducing he might not have been the first one, but it's the first popular one, I think, for introducing the fast zombie. Fast or slow? Which zombie do you prefer?
Fast. It scares the bejesus out of me. That's what made World War Z what I thought was a good movie. I mean, it was more action, almost more action than it was scary.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, 28 Days Later was frightening at the time.
Terrifying. World War Z, when they were just toppling over each other to just
build
a pyramid. Holy that was horrifying.
So yeah, I mean, you've got this thing that's really, there's only one way to kill it. I mean, that's kind of the number one rule with zombies is headshots for the most part, right?
Which is it's very hard to do.
Exactly.
Don't forget cardio. Yeah.
And so now you've got this creature that the small little area that you've got to work with is multiplied by the hundreds of thousands of these things crawling over this wall. Like you've got this 30, 40, 50 foot wall that should keep out just about everything. And now all of a sudden these things are starting to figure out a way to work over and fast. Give me a helicopter now.
Yeah, I like them fast too because it gives you more concern. I feel like if it's supposed to be more of like if they're stuck in a small location where they can't go very far, or like if they were in a basement, okay, well, I know you're not going to be able to just run away from the zombies, so it's fine if they're slow. But when a lot of times it's like exterior running away, if you can't outrun a slow ass zombie, then I feel like you deserve to get bitten. That's on you.
Damn.
Yeah, that's a you problem.
Yeah.
Y'all cold.
No, I agree. You've got a wide open area. You've got vehicles. You've got other modes of transportation. You've just got your own 2 feet with what's assuming maybe a halfway decent pair of shoes. And if you can't get away from a bumbling zombie that's probably got a broken leg or ankle or something, along with whatever, just being undead, then yeah, that's kind of it's kind of your fault.
I prefer the slow ones. I do, but I'll explain why, because I do think the fast ones are scary as hell. But to me, and maybe it's because that was the first one I saw, there's just something absolutely horrifying to me about you see one, okay, I can dance around that one. And then you start seeing more and more and more pop up. And then suddenly you're surrounded and none of them are fast. So it's not like they can all catch you like that. It's just a matter of you have to navigate. But if the numbers overwhelm you, there's nothing you can do. And I just find that I love that aspect. I just find that extremely horrifying and terrifying. And I don't get scared by much. But that's about the only time I ever get scared in a zombie movie is when you have those small lumbering numbers. Because in my mind, same thing. Well, there's no way they don't get away. And if you write it right and you set the movie right, they back themselves into a corner, not a ridiculous corner. Like, I'm going to run into the only house in this field when there's plenty of room for I could keep running. But when you back them into a really smart corner and they end up overwhelmed by numbers versus speed, I just find that more terrifying than speed. Not that speed isn't terrifying, but I just find it more terrifying because to me, it's a suffocation factor. It's
that claustrophobic. It triggers that claustrophobia. Yeah. No, I get it. Absolutely. And don't disagree with you at all.
It's the idea of somebody can nip at your ankle while you're fighting off the rest of them, and that is what takes you out. I love that aspect of it. Well, my story, was it truth or fiction?
Well, I'll tell you this. I guess wrong the last couple times, but I'm going out on a limb, and I'm going to go say fiction.
Okay.
I'm going to hope it's fiction. I'm really hoping.
It's fiction. I wish it was true because that would be cool. That would be cool.
What about the title of your story? What's that?
Well, the title, and ironically, this was inspired. I was golfing with my father on Father's Day. This is actually his title. We were just making jokes, and he just said something. Night of the Living Divot is the joke he said, and that's what spawned my story to begin with. That's what got me on this track. So
that's awesome.
Thanks, Dad.
Oh, that's cool.
And I definitely made it a story where the guy kills his dad. So you're welcome. Full circle. If you like Smirk, please share the episode with your friends. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit. Reddit's great. Share it there. Wherever you socialize, please share the show. And you can join our Facebook group. We're on Twitter at Smirk Podcast. Just use the show's hashtag Smirk. Brian, thanks for being here, buddy.
Always a pleasure.
Okay. And don't forget, Brian will be back. We're going to do the next one with old B. Williams here coming up. So be sure to tune in for that. And as you write your own life story, always remember to tell it with a smirk. Boom. I think Night of the Living Divot was genius. My dad is a genius, and I didn't even know.